There are watches made to be sold, there are watches made to be collected, and then there are watches that were never meant to leave the vault. In 2019, something happened that wasn't supposed to happen. A watch that was never designed for retail, never placed in a catalog, never offered to a single client was sold. Not for $5 million, not for 10, but for $31 million, and that's where the real mystery begins. If it was never meant to be sold, why did it exist at all? This is the story of the Patek Philippe Grand Complication 6300A and why it was never meant to be yours. Patek Philippe doesn't make watches, it manufactures legacy. For more than 180 years, this quiet Swiss house has operated on a level most brands will never reach. While others compete for attention, Patek competes for permanence. Its ambition is not to dominate a season, but to dominate generations. The brand's most famous line says everything: you never actually own a Patek Philippe. You merely look after it for the next generation. That isn't just clever marketing, it's psychological positioning at the highest level. When someone buys a Patek, they are not buying for themselves. They are buying for their bloodline, stepping into a timeline that began long before them and will continue long after they are gone. That is power. Patek does not chase hype cycles. It does not release endless limited editions, collaborate for quick attention, or flood boutiques with excess inventory. In fact, it deliberately produces fewer watches than the market demands. Waiting lists stretch for years not because the manufacturer lacks capacity, but because it refuses to compromise restraint. For Patek, scarcity is not a tactic, it is tradition. And what truly separates the brand from every other luxury house on earth is this: it does not need universal approval. It does not need you to understand it, afford it, or even like it. Its clientele already exists, patient, discreet, and generationally wealthy. When Patek releases a watch, it is not about moving units. It is about reinforcing status at the very top of the hierarchy. Every piece carries a silent message: this is not for everyone. Over decades, that philosophy has built something untouchable. Trends rise and collapse, brands explode into fame and fade into irrelevance. But Patek remains steady, almost indifferent to the noise of the world. That is why what happened with the 6300A feels almost unreal. Because when a brand defined by restraint suddenly creates something radically rare, something extreme, something that breaks its own pattern, you know it wasn't an accident. It was intentional, and that intention is what makes the story unbelievable. The reference 630 wasn't new. Long before the headlines and the record-breaking auction, the Grand Complication 6300G already existed, one of the most complex wristwatches Patek Philippe had ever created. A mechanical giant wrapped in white gold, priced at around $2.2 million, it was heavy, intricate, and positioned far beyond the reach of almost anyone on Earth. It was impressive, it was rare, it was elite. But it wasn't shocking. Then 2019 happened. For the only watch charity auction, Patek Philippe made a decision that instantly made serious collectors pause. They took their most complicated wristwatch and changed just one thing. Not the movement, not the complications, not the design, the metal, they made it in steel. To most people, that might sound backwards. Steel is common, steel is affordable, steel is what everyday watches are made of. But in high horology, steel carries a completely different meaning. Patek does not use steel for its grand complications. Those pieces traditionally live in precious metals, white gold, rose gold, platinum. Steel is typically reserved for sport models, not masterpieces composed of over 1,000 components. So when Patek encased its most complicated creation in stainless steel, it sent a signal that only seasoned collectors truly understood. This was not a downgrade, it was a deliberate act of rarity. Because in the world of high-end watch collecting, steel in the right context is not cheaper. It is rarer, it is harder to obtain. And when a house like Patek Philippe chooses to produce a single, ultra-complicated watch in steel, knowing it may never repeat the decision again, that material becomes more powerful than platinum. In that moment, the 630 stopped being merely extraordinary. It became an anomaly. This is not just another complicated watch. This is the most complicated wristwatch Patek Philippe has ever built. At its core beats the caliber 300 GS AL 36-750 Cheese FUS IRM, a name so technical it almost sounds fictional. Yet inside the case lives one of the most advanced mechanical systems ever fitted onto a human wrist. It carries 20 complications, not decorative flourishes, not aesthetic additions, but true mechanical functions, each demanding space, precision, and extraordinary engineering mastery. 5 of those complications are acoustic. A grand sonnerie that automatically strikes the hours and quarters, a petite sonnerie that marks the time in a different cadence, a minute repeater that chimes the exact time on demand, and then 2 mechanisms the world had never seen before, an acoustic alarm that strikes the programmed time, and a date repeater that audibly announces the calendar date. These are not upgrades, they are inventions. Inside the watch are 1,366 individual components, each one finished, assembled, and adjusted entirely by hand, along with 108 jewels, synthetic rubies positioned with microscopic precision to reduce friction and ensure longevity. The movement is powered by two separate reserves, 72 hours dedicated to timekeeping and 30 hours reserved purely for the chiming system. This watch does not simply tell time, it performs it. The case measures 47.7 millimeters in diameter and 16.07 millimeters thick, undeniably large, yet almost unbelievable considering what it contains. Wearing it is like strapping a cathedral of mechanics to your wrist, and despite this overwhelming complexity, it remains remarkably precise. Certified under the Patek Philippe seal, it is regulated to maintain a daily accuracy between -3 and +2 seconds. Think about that: over 1,300 moving parts, 20 complications, multiple chiming systems, and it still keeps time within mere seconds per day. That is not just watchmaking. That is mechanical control at the highest level. November 9, 2019, Geneva. The room was filled with some of the most powerful collectors on Earth: billionaires, royal families, industry titans, individuals who do not raise paddles unless they intend to win. The Patek Philippe 6300A sat quietly on the stage, calm and silent, almost indifferent to the tension building around it. The event was the only watch charity auction, and the estimate, though bold, was still controlled. Somewhere between $7 and $10 million, already a headline-making figure anywhere else. But this wasn't anywhere else. The bidding began, and within minutes it was clear the estimate meant nothing. 15 million, 20 million. 25 million, each number landed heavier than the last. The atmosphere tightened. Phones pressed harder against ears. Advisors whispered urgently. This was no longer about market value, it was about possession. Then something shifted. Silence, the kind of silence that only exists when history is about to be made. One final bid came in, 31 million Swiss francs. In that instant, the 6300A became the most expensive wristwatch ever sold at auction. Not the most expensive Patek, not the most expensive complicated watch, the most expensive wristwatch, period. The hammer fell, applause followed, and just like that, it was over. The watch that was never meant to exist in steel, the one-off anomaly, disappeared into a private collection. No boutique display, no public exhibition, no second chance, and most likely it will never be seen again. Why was it never meant to be sold? Here's the uncomfortable truth: this was not a commercial product. It wasn't designed to sit in a boutique window with a price tag attached. It wasn't part of a seasonal collection, nor was it created to fill order books or boost quarterly revenue. Patek Philippe does not need a $31 million sale to survive. The 6300A was something else entirely. It was a statement, a demonstration of power. When the most traditional watchmaker in the world decides to build the most complicated wristwatch it has ever made, place it in steel, and limit it to a single piece, that is not business strategy, that is dominance. It was a reminder to the entire industry that Patek operates on a different level. While other brands compete for trends, headlines, and short-term relevance, Patek can shift the entire market with one watch. They don't flood the world with endless releases. They don't create countless variations to stretch demand. When they choose to dominate the conversation, they do something far more dangerous. They release a unicorn, one piece. One moment, one chance, and once it's gone forever. No sequel, no second edition, no repeat. That's why the 6300A feels different. It was never meant to be owned by many. It was meant to prove that at the highest level of watchmaking, Patek Philippe doesn't follow the market follows them. The real genius of the 6300A was not mechanical, it was psychological. Scarcity is power. Every luxury brand understands that formula. Limit supply, increase desire. Make people wait and they want it more, but absolute uniqueness, that is domination. By taking its most complicated wristwatch, placing it in steel, and producing only one piece in the world, Patek Philippe went far beyond creating demand. It created an object that could never be compared, never be matched, never be owned twice. There is no alternative, no second option, no almost the same, just one. And in doing so, Patek accomplished three things at once. First, it reinforced its untouchable status, reminding collectors that when it comes to high complications, no one else operates with this level of authority. Second, it proved that it does not merely participate at the top of the market, it controls it. When Patek decides to move the ceiling higher, the ceiling moves. Third, it cemented its position as the ultimate trophy brand. In the world of billionaires, value is not about function, it is about exclusivity. The rarest object wins, and nothing is rarer than one. Yes, the watch was sold for charity at the only watch auction, but this was bigger than charity. This was legacy warfare, a silent message sent to the wealthiest collectors on earth. When Patek speaks, history listens. And every billionaire watching that auction understood exactly what it meant. Who bought it, we don't know, and that is exactly the point. In a world where wealth is usually loud and performative, this purchase was silent. No press conference, no public appearance, no wrist shot circulating online. Just one winning bid at the only watch auction, and then disappearance. But understand this clearly, the buyer did not simply purchase a watch from Patek Philippe. They purchased a moment in history. They secured a chapter in horology that can never be rewritten. Every time the most expensive watches ever sold are discussed, the 6300A will be there, and so will its owner, even if their name is never revealed. This is not something that can be replicated with more money. You cannot call Patek and request another. You cannot outbid someone in the future. You cannot wait for a second production run. There isn't one, not royalty, not CEOs. Not oil magnates, not tech billionaires. No one else can ever acquire this exact watch. There are expensive watches, pieces that cost millions. There are rare watches, limited editions with small production numbers. And then there's the 6300A one piece, one owner, one permanent place in history. A watch so exclusive that even unlimited money cannot create another. Some watches are built for wrists, worn daily, scratched, lived with, passed around the table at dinner. Some watches are built for safes, stored in vaults, brought out occasionally, admired under soft light, protected like treasure. And some are built for history. The Patek Philippe Grand Complication 6300A was never meant to sit beneath boutique glass while a polite sales associate explained its features. It was never meant to be tried on casually, never meant to exist in multiples, never meant to circulate through the ordinary channels of ownership. It was created for a single moment, a single auction, a single buyer, and a permanent place in the record books. It served as a reminder that at the very top of watchmaking there are levels, and above those levels there's Patek Philippe. No race, no rivalry, no competition fighting for second place. Just one brand capable of creating a steel watch that rewrites history. And now that steel masterpiece sits somewhere behind closed doors in a private vault in silence. We may never see it again, but that was always the point.